Hey there, this video is all about how to add a power switch onto the back of a shocker sport, or brick shocker as they're called. As you can see, I've got one installed right there. It's a little toggle switch that acts as the power button for this marker. The reason for this modification is because the older dome switch boards don't have any switch at all, so the only way to turn them on or off is to unplug the battery, as you probably know. Although I should mention, even if you have a lever switch board like this one, nothing says that you have to use the switch on the side. You can always move it to the back just if you want to get your hands dirty. The reason I wanted to make this video is because a guy asked me for some instructions, and I realized that I don't actually have any formal instructions outside of just pictures of the finished markers. So I'm going to make this quick video just to show some of the stuff that goes into it. I'm not actually performing the modification because I already have it done, but at least be able to show you. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and take this gun apart and we're going to get into it. Hold on. Okay, my homies, check this out. I've got my marker taken apart and you can see the internals on the switch modification that I've already performed, and this will kind of show you what has to be done. The modification is very simple. The first step, however, is that you need to buy a switch. It has to be like an on-off switch, like an SP-SD. That stands for single pull, single throw. That's what I recommend you get. You can get a double throw switch if you want. This right here is a double throw because it has 3 contacts on the back. There's a common in the middle and then the 2 on the outside. So when you click it, it only has one direction that it goes to, back and forth, on or off. I got this switch from Radio Shack like way back in the day. So if you've got a Radio Shack near you or some other electronics place, then you can check them out and see what they have. The possibilities for switches are basically endless. It just depends on what they have. This is a nice one because it has a little threaded section and it comes with a nut and the washer. So all you have to do for that is drill a hole and then stick the switch in there. But you can see also on this marker, the previous owner installed this slide switch on the bottom with a pretty ugly milling job, but hey, it works, so I just go with it. But this is a slide switch. As you can see, it just slides back and forth compared to this one that I use for power, which is a toggle switch. But you can use whatever you want. You can use a rocker switch, you can use basically anything. I should mention there's a lot of online stores where you can buy the stuff from. One of them that I used to use back in the day was called allelectronics.com, and they have a lot of switches that are very similar to these, the stuff that you get at Radio Shack. And it's not the most expensive stuff in terms of quality, but it certainly does the job. So that's your first step. From that point, you basically need to find a way to mount it to the gun, and in this situation all you got to do is just drill a hole, and that's pretty easy to do. If you have a bench vise, it'll make it quite a bit easier, like a Colombian vise or something. For that, just vise down the circuit housing and try to protect it with like a piece of wood or something so you don't scratch it up. But you just got to do it with a hand drill. It's no big deal. If you've got a drill press or something, that makes it quite a bit easier, but it's definitely not required. All you need is just a drill of some sort. Okay, so then once you got the switch mounted in the back, the electrical side is what you got to look at, and for that, again, it's pretty easy to do. If I look at the marker here, I've got my battery connection leading down to the frame, and you can see one wire is going to the switch, and then the other wire just goes straight to the board. So if you take a look at like this busted board I have, all you got to do is just take one of the 2 wires and snip it, and then solder it into the switch so that it cuts off the power. So you'll have the battery plugged in all the time, but the switch will determine whether or not the current actually goes to the board, and that's really all there is to it. So I suggest that you get out your soldering iron and do the modification the correct way with a solder joint, and then use some heat shrink tube like that. Again, you can get all that stuff from a Radio Shack or whatever. That's the best way to do it. Back in the day on the shocker websites, guys used to advocate just trimming the wires and then stripping them and tying them together and using electrical tape without soldering. And I think that that would work in a pinch, but it's really not the most reliable in terms of long term. You can even see, I mean, this stuff's soldered, but it's not going to come off unless like you get a bunch of contamination inside the gun or a bunch of moisture or something. So I recommend soldering. I can't teach you to solder though, that's kind of the downside of this video, but since you're on YouTube already, you can probably check out some tutorials and practice with some wires. I guess you'll also need a small length of wire. I kind of forgot to mention that, but again, that's cheap and easy to find. So that's all you got to do. You should take note that I've got, in this particular gun, this toggle switch in the back is being used for power, and that's usually plugged in through that little port. The other switch that I have, that one with the blue wires on the bottom, the underside switch, I have that connected to the turbo mode because I'm using a DS board, as you can see. And what I did, if you follow the wires, they solder right up to the little dip switch that controls the turbo mode, which is the number 4 switch on the left switch bank. So when I turn the marker on, instead of having to actuate that little baby switch, you can just flip this underside mounted one and it controls turbo mode. But that's only because this board has turbo mode programming. Not all SF boards have it, or sorry, not all DS boards have it, but you can always add the switch in the front and that'll give you the capability of shooting SF. And just along the same lines, you can also use this type of switch and run some wires all the way up to those little tiny terminals located on the front of the board. If you want to use the SF modes like the fully auto or the 3-shot, you'd need to do some more extensive wiring, but anything's possible. So I think the only other thing I have to mention about this is that when you get all this wiring inside the circuit housing like this, it's a good idea to maybe use a piece of tape or something to try to hold them down, because you don't want to pinch any wires when you go to reinstall the marker with the solenoids. I think you used to have a piece of tape in there, but the wires seem to hold themselves to the side pretty good as of now, so I must have taken it out at some point. Alright, I went ahead and reinstalled the switch into its position with a little washer, and you can see how it works. Turn it on, got a battery in there. When you click the trigger, it would be firing if I had the solenoids connected, but it's quick and easy to test out. So if you have a dome switch board at this point and you don't have a power switch on it, then this is really something you got to do, because it doesn't take a lot of effort and it's a pretty good way to get your hands dirty and get a nice modification done of the gun. There's so much you can do to these old shockers that it's a terrific gun for modifying. But like I said, be careful about the wiring. Got to get that out of the way. Might have to put some more tape in. Jeez. Oh well. So I'm going to post this video on probably a how-to section or something like that. I'll make a guide, take some pictures. But besides for that, I guess that's about all there is to it. So let me know if you got any questions or anything, and try to get back to you. But I think that's it. Okay, thanks. Bye.